discipline. They are all based on the book of the same title. And today we are covering chapter 38 on the virtues, or personal qualities, character strengths, however you want to call them. Now, everything that you need to understand this class will be explained in this class. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to see the examples, the exercises, and have the full picture, then you can get the book or the audiobook. Again, for those of you who have the book, today we're covering chapter 38. I am broadcasting this live through the Insight Timer app and also on my YouTube channel. Wherever you're watching this from, welcome. Welcome Norma, Ines, Peggy, Debbie, Oleg, Loretta, and everyone else. So we had a bit of a break for 2 weeks. How did you guys go on the break? Were you able to keep some of your self-discipline practices and intentions? We're here to continue the journey, to continue talking about it. Hopefully the daily videos on YouTube and the articles every week still kept you inspired and connected with this framework, with this way of living. Okay, so before we go and talk about virtues, self-discipline is a virtue. I would say that self-discipline is the king of all virtues. Many people call it this way, or the father of all virtues. The father and the mother, because self-discipline contains both awareness and willpower. Both of these. It's a very complete approach to personal development. It's the heart of personal development, of spiritual practice. Because without self-discipline, even if you have the best tools in the planet, even if you have the best system, the best tradition, the best teachings, if you don't have self-discipline to implement them, to integrate them in an effective way, you will not get that transformation. You will not get the benefit. So self-discipline is the core of any change you want to make in yourself or in your life. Any goal you may have with your career, with your health, with finances, with relationship, with home life, whatever it is, you will need self-discipline so that you keep on the journey until your destination, so that you overcome whatever obstacles come your way. Procrastination, distraction, lack of motivation, challenges, lack of time, self-doubt, excuses, failures, whatever comes. If you have self-discipline, there's a tool in this book, at least one tool for each of these challenges. There's likely 3 tools for each of these challenges. And all of this comes under the umbrella of self-discipline. Self-discipline is not self-punishment, it is self-respect. It is you keeping your promises to yourself. And when you do that, your self-esteem increases. You like yourself more. Your self-confidence increases. You feel more capable. You believe in yourself more. And you live a different life. You start believing that certain things are possible, that you wouldn't in the past pursue them or dare have them as a goal because you felt like, I can't do it. It's not going to happen. But once you become disciplined in an area of your life, once you start increasing your awareness and willpower, you realize that you're capable of much more than you thought you were. So that is the journey of self-discipline. It's there to help you become the best version of yourself, to help you live your best life. And habits is part of this, but it's not everything. Habits is part of self-discipline, but self-discipline is much more. When people think about self-discipline, they think about habits, productivity, time management. What else? Impulse control, task management. I don't know, all of these things. And this is helpful. I talk about them in the book. But this is the external aspect of self-discipline. There is then the internal aspect of self-discipline, which is using the skills of awareness and willpower, using the tools in the book to transform yourself, to transform your inner world, the way you think, the emotions that you have, what is your baseline emotional level, how you feel about yourself and your life, what's possible for you, your state of consciousness. All of this is involved in internal self-discipline, which is another word for self-transformation or self-mastery. I launched the Juicy Accountability Program for women this past week and have been so much productive since. So that helped. Wonderful. Very cool. Very cool. I survived. All right. Okay. So for those of you who have been here for a while, you know what I'm going to talk about next. For those of you who are new, well, this is going to be new. My approach to self-discipline is very different from the popular approaches out there, which is all about mental toughness, pushing yourself to do things, beating yourself up to stay on track. I call that the military self-discipline or the Marine self-discipline. It works for some people. It works sometimes. It's not for everybody. It takes a lot of energy. My approach to this topic is based on awareness. It's awareness first, then willpower. And the order matters. The order makes the whole difference, because you can solve many self-discipline challenges, many self-control challenges, which is the term used in the psychological literature. You can solve many of them simply by being aware. By being aware of your aspirations, aware of your values in the moment, increasing the weight of those values and your long-term goals in relation to the temptation, to what's easy in the moment. And awareness also means that there is more space inside of you, that there is space between you and your thoughts, between you and your emotions, between you and your triggers. And this space is the space of your freedom. The wider is the space, the more freedom you will have. The freedom, what type of freedom? The freedom to do that which is most aligned to your values, that which is going to be a +1 in your life. That if everything else is pointing you to go left, your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, the environment is pointing you to go left. But if you know that going right here is the right turn, that is the step forward towards your ideal self, the life you want to live. If you know that going right is what you need to do, then you can do it if you have that inner space. If not, then you are a product of your conditioning and you will not feel very free or very empowered. I joined the app and have felt rewarded. Wonderful. So mindful self-discipline is based on 3 pillars: aspiration, awareness, and action. Aspiration is for you to know your purpose. Awareness is for you to remember your purpose. Action is to live your purpose, to make decisions day in and day out that affirm your purpose, that take you a step forward. It's using your values, your goals as the compass pointing you the true north, and then having the strength, the awareness and the strength needed to take a step in the right direction again and again. Every time you do that, you get a +1 in your life. And so self-discipline is the art of ending each day on a positive balance. And as you're doing that, you are getting momentum. For those of you who are subscribers to my blog, you will see the article that I wrote last week about momentum. It was something that took me a long time to fully understand and articulate, but it's a key piece of this puzzle. And self-discipline is what allows us to get momentum in our life, to have the consistency we need to actually have results, make changes we want to make. So we have already talked about these 3 pillars in the past episodes in this season. Now we are talking about the chapters that come at the end of the book, which is taking self-discipline a little bit deeper and to other topics. Then which app? Mindful Self-Discipline. It's available on my website. So today we're talking about virtues. Virtues are a topic that was always emphasized in the several wisdom traditions. The Stoics, the Buddhists, the yogis, the Christians, mystics. In every spiritual tradition on earth, there is an emphasis on developing certain virtues. Virtues are character strengths. They are superpowers in a way. I like to call them psychological assets because they make our life easier. They make things possible for us. Let me give you some examples of virtues. Courage, focus, honesty, confidence, patience, energy, discernment, humility, decisiveness, acceptance, perseverance, determination, mindfulness, grit, contemplation, balance, tolerance, resilience, simplicity, caution, righteousness, loyalty, reliability, justice, insight, understanding, perspective, clarity, vision, openness, trust, faith, joy, cheerfulness, gratitude, forgiveness, non-attachment, flexibility, kindness, compassion, service, sacrifice, consideration, tact. So these are some. I'm looking at a list of virtues that I have on one of my blog posts. These are some of many. What else we have here? Purity, temperance, fairness, optimism, centeredness, gratitude, grace, excellence, thoughtfulness, dignity, creativity, cooperation, service, commitment. Okay, the list goes on and on, but this gives you an idea. Each of these things is a personal quality. It's a psychological asset. If you have, you are bigger as a person. There's more that is possible for you. And so my first question for you is, what is one or two virtues that you would like to develop the most? I just read a huge list for you. Maybe the one that you have in mind is not in this list, and that's okay. But if you can share in the comments, what is one or two virtues that you would like to develop the most? That if you develop, it will make a big difference in your life. And one way of thinking about this is, if you're into movies or stories, fiction, you can think about, a character that you really like and admire, either in reality or in a movie or a story, and see what qualities, what virtues that person has. That's probably something that you want to have as well. Okay, so some answers are coming here. Arthur says, honestly, it's definitely one that I live by very strictly. Compassion, still working on focus, consistency, clarity, resilience, forgiveness, curiosity. Yes? All right. Love and mindfulness. So, as we are going through the class today, as we're going through these exercises today, keep these in mind so that you already know what to work on, where to apply these skills. I said service twice. Okay. Yeah, it was more than one list that I was going by. All right, so let me start with some quotes. The first one is from the Buddha. To walk safely through the maze of human life, one needs the light of wisdom and the guidance of virtue. Next one from Confucius. No person is free who is not a master of himself. And from Epictetus, the superior, that one is from Epictetus. The second one is from Confucius. The superior man thinks always of virtue, the common man thinks of comfort. So different traditions have always emphasized virtue. And what is virtue? Virtue is a way of thinking. It's a way of operating in the world. I like to think of virtues as narratives. Depending on the story you're telling yourself, depending on the thoughts that you're cultivating, a certain virtue will arise or it will not arise. If you think that when I start something, I have to finish it, you will have the virtue of perseverance, commitment, maybe tenacity. If you feel like everything that is worthwhile takes time, you will have the virtue of patience. And you don't need to hold this particular thought in your mind to have this virtue. But if you want to develop this virtue, it's helpful to look at it as being a narrative, of being a way of thinking, of operating, so that you can cultivate that thought, a new way of talking to yourself. The stories you tell yourself can create virtues or they can create shortcomings. They can empower you or they can disempower you. They can create solutions or they can create problems. It depends on what are those virtues, on what is your self-talk. They can create psychological assets or psychological liabilities. And we all have our narratives, the way we think, the lenses through which we see the world. Now, we were born into this world without any narrative, without any lenses. And it's good to realize that, because it means that whatever narrative you have now, whatever lenses you have, it was given to you. It was developed over time. Someone taught you to think that way. When you realize that, then, if this narrative is not working, and this was something that is not natural to me, it was learned, so I can unlearn it. And I can learn something that is more helpful. Is this making sense? If these were truths, if these narratives, if these ideas were truths, then there's not much we can do about it. We can pretend they're not there, but that's not really helpful. How long can we do that for? But if they're just things that we have learned to believe in, learned to use as the lenses through which we see the world, then we can do something different. Then we can learn a different narrative. How do we learn a different narrative? If you want to develop the virtue of compassion, the virtue of focus, what else was mentioned here? Clarity, consistency, forgiveness. Then we need to identify what is the way of thinking that powers that virtue, that makes me naturally have that quality. then we start adopting it. We start telling ourselves that story. We bring those thoughts to mind again and again, perhaps in the form of affirmations. And habitually, by paying attention to them, by believing them again and again, we are believing them into existence. We are making use of them to navigate the world, and then eventually becomes part of us, our new normal. Becca asks, would the empowerment come from identifying a need? I'm not sure how you're making that relationship. If you'd like to expand on that idea. We feel empowered when we feel full of energy, when we feel expanded in our awareness, when we feel bigger than the problem that we are facing, bigger than the challenges in our life, we feel empowered. When there is a sense of capacity, that I can do this, that what I think, say, and do matters, that when I decide something, it gets done. A change happens in the world. That's a state of empowerment. For example, I see people who are unhoused. Their need is to be compassionate and to help them somehow. So that is a way of thinking that will help you develop compassion, generosity, consideration, etc. Service. I'm trying to heal an addiction that is treatment resistant. How do you think this would connect? Think about what positive state of mind or positive emotion or what virtue is the antithesis of this addiction, is the opposite of this addiction. That if you have it, this addiction will have no need to arise in the first place. And that varies from person to person. The answer may not come like this. You may need to sit with this question for some days. It may be that it's love and connectedness. It may be that it's purpose and focus. It may be that it's a sense of empowerment. What is that state of mind, that virtue that is the opposite of what? Of the state of mind that makes this addiction come up. If we can figure that out, then we can use the tools we're going to talk about today to develop that. And this is not the only way, but you asked me to connect the topic of addiction with today's class, and that's how I would make that connection. So we have believed certain stories and narratives into existence through repetition. And also sometimes it was not through repetition, but an intense emotional experience. We can call it a trauma. But perhaps I wouldn't like to use that word. Something intense happened, was a powerful emotion, and then it's almost like a way of thinking and feeling and a different way of operating in the world gets engraved into ourselves. And that could be either positive or negative. So that is also a way that narratives, that self-talk, that repetitive thoughts are born. Now, if you want to create them, if you want to create positive ones, it's hard to emulate that. It's hard to think like, okay, how can I create an intense experience that will... It's somewhat possible. It could be participating in a competition or trying something difficult and succeeding. But the way of repetition, it's easier to implement. That you repeat the new thoughts to yourself again and again. And if you want to develop more focus in your life, you could have an affirmation such as, I extremely focused on what matters. Or whatever affirmation would work for you. And then you say that to yourself. You remember that in moments of choice, you remember that in moments of distraction, and then you act in a way that is in alignment with it. You act in a way that affirms the affirmation. That's a key point. The way of articulating it just came to me right now. We need to affirm the affirmation. And that's not only to say it. Everyone can say an affirmation. To affirm an affirmation means to affirm it with our way of being, moment after moment. That's the deeper way of practicing affirmations. That if you have an affirmation that says, I am courageous and confident, that when it comes time for you to express courage and confidence, you remember, I am courageous and confident, and you do the courageous and confident action in that moment. Whether fear of failure is there or not, whether self-doubt is there or not, whether anything else is there in the background, let it be in the background. As I say in my fear of failure course, let fear of failure be the background noise of your success, of you taking action. You affirm that affirmation, not only verbally, but through your decisions, through the way you show up in life. Now, in mindful self-discipline, one of the key techniques is the PAW method. Pause, awareness, and willpower. It's the reason why I made these, that pause, awareness, and willpower, because it's the type of thing we need to remember multiple times each day and practice. So how do we integrate this with the PAW method? If you have an affirmation of I am courageous, and there's a moment that comes and it triggers fear, well, you need to pause. Because if you don't pause, you will not interrupt that automatic reaction, that conditioning. You pause, you become aware that fear is here. This thing triggered fear. And this is based on my conditioning. This is a -1 in my life. I want to do the +1, which is to take action on this thing that is important for me. Then willpower. It could be bring your affirmation, recharge, reconnect, and then go and take action. Where can we get those? They are on my website, mindfulselfdiscipline.com. If you go to the resources tab, there's a place there where you can, or if you go to the resources page, that's where you'll find it. I think there's a link there. Where do you find the resources page? If you're watching this on YouTube, I am going to put the link here. If you're watching this on Insight Timer, you can search for my name in the app, Giovanni. That will take you to my teacher's profile page, and the link is in the bio. Okay, so that is the general introduction about virtues, why they matter, and how we can develop them. Now I'm going to cover 2 techniques for developing virtues. Can you see the slides? Okay. Virtue is the only friend which follows us even beyond the grave. Everything else ends with death. That is a saying from Swami Vivekananda, who was a Hindu monk. So for those of you who believe in the idea of reincarnation or rebirth, that we don't end with death, then what are we going to take? Everything else will disappear, will be left behind. What are we going to take? We're going to take the state of our mind, our virtues, our thoughts and emotions. That goes on. And so that's why working on ourselves, improving our inner life, developing these skills is the most important thing. Because at the end, it's the only thing that will continue, that will take on. Our mind and our karmas, the results of the actions we have taken. So 2 techniques. The first one is kindle the virtue, and the second one is absorb the virtue. Now, if you are a member of the Mindful Self-Discipline app, you will see that there are 2 meditations called Kindle the Virtue and Absorb the Virtue. So then you can just go and press play, and it will guide you through all of this process in the moment that I am sharing here. So every virtue is a state. It's a state of mind, body, and heart. And so it leaves footprints in our mind, body, and heart. So we can say that, yes, for example, the virtue of confidence. It is a narrative, yes. It's a way of thinking that I can do this, that I would choose to believe in myself. So these type of thoughts. But it also shows up in the heart. It shows up in the heart as a kind of a strength, an expansion, a presence and groundedness. And it shows up also in your body, in your sensations. And these 3 are different from person to person. For me, when the state of confidence is, I feel that it's always present. It's my background because I've cultivated it. But when it's especially strong, there is the sense of like a strong pillar, that my spine is like a very, very strong pillar, and then nothing can shake me. So that's how it feels in my body. And this concept of footprint is important because that's what we're going to use in these 2 techniques to create that virtue. That yes, when I'm confident, I feel the sensations in my body. But if at a moment I am not confident and I would need to feel confident, I can close my eyes and imagine these sensations. Imagine that these sensations are here, or simply remember them. And if I hold on to that memory or that imagination for a few moments, the state of confidence will arise. It's a 2-way street. The state creates the footprints evoke the state. And this is true with any inner state. The state of peace, the state of bliss, the virtues of whatever it is, patience. Oh, something happened here. Okay, no. Just give me a moment as I figure this out. What just happened? Okay, we're back. All right. So it's a 2-way street. If you think about the virtue of energy, that you want to have more zest, you want to have more enthusiasm, more energy, more vitality, I'm putting all of these in the same bucket. If you investigate internally or remember, take yourself to a time when you were experiencing that state, then observe what's happening inside of you when you are in that state. For example, for me, I feel that when I am in that heightened state of energy or enthusiasm, there is a bubbliness in the body. There's a sense of expansion. Things are kind of like a wave. They're vibrating. They're flowing. There is a little bit of sense of heat or warmth. Yeah, it's almost like every cell is kind of bouncing or dancing. That's depending on how high I'm talking about that state. And so if any day I am feeling down, which basically doesn't happen after all this training, but if that would happen and I needed to evoke this state, I could do it in this way. Yes, I could bring affirmations, I could read a book or do something that reminds me or inspires me, or I can just close my eyes and know that the brain is the greatest pharmacy in the world and I don't need anything to evoke something inside of me, because it's the brain itself is what evokes the different feelings, the hormones, all these reactions. So why can't I do it directly? Well, I can, and I know how. So then I would imagine, remember those sensations and imagine that they are present here and now, that they are happening, and create it with my imagination. And I know that in the first few seconds nothing's happening, but I know that all I have to do is to hold on to it, and then suddenly it comes. So to kindle the virtue, learn to identify what are the footprints of this virtue or positive state in your body, mind, and heart. You could even just think about body and mind, because when we say heart, what we mean is almost like a combination of, we can think in these three terms. And as I said, it's going to be different things for different people. And this exercise requires that you are connected with yourself. And some people are more than others, so this might be a little bit challenging for you in the beginning. As with everything, it gets easier with practice. There's the saying, everything is hard before it becomes easy. I think it's from the German philosopher and poet Goethe. Whoever said it was right, though. Doesn't matter who said it. Everything is hard before it becomes easy. So don't get discouraged if these exercises feel hard for you in the beginning. So in Kindle the Virtue, step number 1 is to relax and ground yourself. It's really hard to do any of these exercises if you are all over the place or tense, agitated. Then you will recreate the experience in yourself. Recreate the experience of that virtue in yourself. And I call this kindling, using the footprints of the body, mind, and heart. This should be step 3. Then you will expand it through your concentration. You will enhance that experience by continuously paying attention to it, not getting distracted with other things, but staying with it. The more you stay with it, the stronger it becomes. So as you can see, this is a practice of meditation. But instead of focusing on your breath or on a mantra or on a chakra, you're focusing on an experience, on a feeling or emotion, and everything that comes with that state. Let me see how we are going. Okay, I think we're still connected. So let's talk more about the 2 key steps here. Kindling, you're recreating those bodily sensations, the emotional experience, and the mental self-talk or narratives. And you don't need to do these 3. It's enough to have one strong handle or footprint, but you might find it helpful to use these 3. In the guided meditation in the app, I use these 3 because I never know who is listening. Is it going to be more the body, the mind, or the heart? So you have that, all those options. And you kindle either through memory or imagination. The first option is memory, that if you have experienced that state, if you want to be more compassionate, and there was a time in your life where you experienced intense compassion, then you can remember that state. If you want to be more focused, and there was a time in your life that you were really focused, you can remember that state, meaning that you have already experienced that virtue. It's easier for you to recall it. Now, if you haven't, or if it was not so strong, then you can use your imagination. Imagine how it would feel to feel that way. And you can have an external anchor if you want to, someone that you know of, or someone that exists, or even a fictional character that has that quality, and you're kind of going into the mind of that person and trying to figure out how does that feel, and then imagining that it's happening for you in this moment. And enhancing is focusing all your attention on these 3 handles, or on one of them. the more attention you give it, the deeper are the neural pathways that you are creating around that experience. And if the neural pathways are really deep because you have done this exercise multiple times, seriously, then it means that you can get to a point that you can turn on that emotion, almost like the push of a button. It's almost like you have created a shortcut, a button in your brain, that if I press this, there's going to be a chain of events, and then that state is going to be available. No side effects. So, unlike other alternatives. But for that, of course, it takes time and energy. And you can do this also with any emotion or feeling that you would like to be more present in your life. You can do this kindle the virtue, kindle the positive emotion. And you really master the ability to tap onto that feeling, onto that emotional state. I have done this with 3 emotions. The first one was with peace. The second one was with bliss. And I don't know if I would share this or not, but okay, just this first before I forget. You can repeat an affirmation if you want to aid with that process. I'm just going to read this and we close this topic. By 3 methods we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is the noblest. Then by imitation, which is the easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. So that leads into our second technique. But first, let me see if we have any questions. So Nitsan says, I don't know if it's only me, but I literally forget to practice either my affirmations or even following my calendar, ADD. Yes, so that is a typical symptom of ADD, although not necessarily it is that, but it's in that area of things. And what I can encourage you to do is to, on one side, have strong intentions to do it. In the book, I talk about the power visualization meditation that can help you create such an intention and program your brain to remember these things. And if you are a member of the app, you can use the guided meditation for it. So that's one side of one way of solving this problem. And the other way is having reminders. Have reminders on your phone, on your environment, that remind you to then go and do those things. That makes it easier for you to build a habit. And you can use both approaches at the same time. Anna says, I can do that through music. Sure, music is a powerful way to kindle emotions, to kindle states. Movies can also be a powerful way. If you watch a movie of someone being patient and persevering regardless of the intense obstacles and succeeding at the end, the mirror neurons in our brain, you will feel a little bit of that emotion. And if you can bridge that gap and say to yourself, I can also do this, let me hold on to this and create it into my own life, then yes, you have found a way to get into that state. Okay, so that is a technique number 1, which is to kindle the virtue. And by the way, these classes are made possible by donations from appreciative listeners. So if you appreciate this class, if this class is informative, helpful, inspiring for you, consider leaving a donation to support my work. Insight Timer doesn't pay us to be here. We are here because we love to share this knowledge and to make a change. So it's up to you. And thank you, Jen and Becca, and everyone else who has been donating. Another way that you can support my work of course, is to get additional copies of the books, especially this book, for our friends and family. Leaving a review on Amazon that will help the book. The more reviews we get, the more attention the book gets, and then other publishers wants to publish it in other languages, which is pretty cool. I was just a publisher in India reached out to me, and they're going to publish it in Hindi and perhaps other Indian languages. So I'm pretty happy about that. So that is another way that you can support. And for those of you who are members of my app, thank you for your ongoing support. Yeah, so it will come out in Hindi, and the book is available in Portuguese now. It's coming out in Chinese very soon, in a month or so, and it's being translated to Turkish as well, then Turkish and Hindi. Okay, let me see if there are any questions on YouTube. Okay. Now moving on to the second technique. Let me share my screen here. The second technique is to absorb the virtue. Find a person or character who has the virtue you wish to develop, and then you absorb it from them. There are two ways to do this. It could be by association. When you spend time with virtuous people, when you spend time with people who have certain qualities, you tend to develop those qualities in yourself. You tend to feel in similar ways and think in similar ways. That's why the Buddha has said that the Sangha is one of the three jewels of the Buddha Dharma, of the practice. The teacher, the teaching, and the community. Teacher, teaching, community, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Because when you are in association with people who are moving in the same direction, you get greater momentum. It is easier to develop those qualities. And the other way is by identification. When you connect your consciousness to the consciousness of that person, and they don't need to know what you're doing, they can't know what you're doing. It's internally. You are learning to resonate with that way of being, to vibrate to the same frequency. And that's also what we do, by the way, when we practice mantras, the traditional mantras that are, in Sanskrit or Pali or Tibetan. We are making our body and mind resonate to a certain frequency. And then certain knowledge and skills begin to appear inside of us. So here's the technique. And again, I have a guided meditation for this in the app. But here it is if you want to try it on your own. First step is to go into a state of deep relaxation and calmness using by whatever meditation technique or breathing technique you like. Then you visualize or imagine the person standing in front of you. Feel their presence. And it doesn't matter if you're not good at visualizing. Some people have a condition called aphantasia, which means you can't visualize. I used to have this condition. And I was like, what? These people tell me to visualize things and we can't. I can't. It just doesn't make sense. It just disappears the next moment. I don't have any clarity. I trained myself out of it. So it's possible. But you don't need to see that image, kind of pixel perfect. You don't need to see anything. Imagine could be just feeling their presence. Suppose that person is in front of you with your closed eyes. And make it as real as possible. Then think of the quality of that person that you wish to learn, that you wish to absorb inside of you. Think about how that person expresses that quality. Contemplate the way they think, the way they feel, and the way it presents in their body, that quality. So one of my coaching clients who came to me for self-discipline, now she's pretty good on that, and we're working on self-confidence. That is the main virtue she wants to develop. She talked about Katniss Everdeen from the movie Hunger Games. So you would imagine that person in front of you. I know it's a fictitious character. It doesn't matter. It's all about teaching a pattern to your consciousness. How does that person think when she's facing an obstacle? How does she show up and feel? So contemplate that quality through that icon, through that person. And the use of the word icon here is interesting, because just like an icon on the desktop of your computer is not the actual document. It's a shortcut to the document. It points to the document, but it's not the document. The same thing, when you visualize something like this, it's pointing to a certain way of being, to a certain pattern. It's a shortcut. And then while you are still envisioning or feeling that person, pay attention to your breath so you're getting back to yourself. And imagine that every time you are inhaling that quality into your body and onto your mind. And as you are exhaling, imagine that you're spreading it all over your body. And you continue like this for as many cycles as you wish, until you really feel it. Then here's where the mystical aspect of this practice comes in, if you wish. Forget about your separate existence for a moment and surrender to that quality. Become that quality. Become one with that state. Disappear into that state. That's the way of becoming one with it. Feel what the person feels, think as they think, and see the world as they see it. Now notice the footprints of that virtue, of that quality inside of you. And take a mental snapshot, meaning that you kind of memorize that state in your body, mind, and emotions. You consolidate. You take a picture, so to speak. You engrave it in yourself. And that's helpful because in the future, when you want to rekindle this state, you can use this mental snapshot to get there quicker. And then as you're going about your day, remember that mental snapshot. Remember the footprints of that state in you. And then recreate those thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Act as if that is already you. And leave all the doubts, all the separation behind. Affirm your affirmations. All right, let me see if you guys have any questions before I go more into this. Becca, will they be in the languages you speak, meaning your audio? My guided meditations are all in English. I do have some here in Insight Timer that are in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The Portuguese ones were read by me or guided by me. The book translations. No, it's not about the languages that I speak. I don't speak Chinese. Whichever publisher from another country feels like, okay, there's a market for this book in our country, they will contact me. Thank you, Dan. Inspiration. Yeah. Inspiration equals inhalation. Yes. I think I'm not sure if they still use it like this in current English, but in Old English, yes, to inspire, to take breath in, right? When you are inspired, it's like you have taken a new breath, a new life. And to expire is to die, to let go, to disappear. Expiration. Inspiration is life, and expiration is relaxation, is disappearance. So the requirements for this to work is that you have imagination, that you have open-mindedness. Open-mindedness means mental flexibility in a way. Open-mindedness that allows you to let go of your identity as a frame of reference and take on another identity, another way of being. Focus, because you need to hold on to it. In the beginning, you may feel that you're trying to do this and it's kind of not so clear, and then suddenly, almost for a flash of a second, it almost feels like you switch into it. You fall into it. But then you come back because of the pull of your current identity. But with practice, you're able to do that more often, like you're dipping your toes in the water, and to dive deeper and deeper over time. So the recommended protocol is to practice this daily for at least 21 consecutive days, so 3 weeks. If you skip a day, start again. Aim for 21 consecutive days practicing this to really internalize a new way of being, a new virtue or quality. I have a course here on Insight Timer called Developing Your Virtues or Superpowers, something like this. If you search for my name in the app, Giovanni, you will get to my teacher's profile page, and there you'll find all the courses that I have created. And there I have one meditation for each of 10 different virtues that you can use for this purpose. Okay. So you can use this absorbed virtue for any quality, skill, virtue, or state. You can even use it for a skill. You can use for in relation to any person, whether you know them or not, whether they are real or imagined, that's okay. In the book, I mention a couple of stories, or maybe just one story of how I've used this to develop a skill in soccer that I didn't have. And it was a temporary thing because I just did it once, and then I played soccer very skillfully for some minutes, like I was not myself, literally. And then I came back to being myself. And I repeated that experiment successfully in other physical skills, such as bowling and handball. But, it was always like kind of a one-off. At that time, I was a teenager. I didn't have the mindset, the patience, the perseverance that I have now. I was just exploring things. So you can definitely use this not only for developing virtues, but also skills. You can use this to develop even states of mind, a state of higher awareness, of awakening, etc. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this. Now, why does it work? If we want to explain it in scientific terms, or of what we know currently in science, we can say maybe it's mirror neurons, which is we are mirroring that behavior, that state within ourselves, and that's how we're learning. As Confucius says, by imitation, which is the easiest path. Or maybe it's by quantum entanglement in a deeper way. Now, quantum entanglement happens when two particles are entangled, Whatever happens to one happens to the other. It does not matter the distance in space or in time, as mind-bending as this may be. If it happens to one, it happens to the other. It's like it's the same being. When you are uniting your awareness with the awareness of another person or another pattern, this can happen. Of course, for it to go into this level of depth, it takes repetition, practice, time. But that's the possibility. In a way, that's what happens through love, which is a form of quantum entanglement. The mother that really loves the child can almost read the child's mind. Can feel from a distance, something happened with him today. No other explanation. And then the kid had a little accident. It's quantum entanglement. There's some level of quantum entanglement because the mother, knowingly or unknowingly, is practicing this, is constantly learning to resonate with that child so that, something big happens, it resonates back. Or there's also the idea from all mystical traditions that everything is one, that everything is connected. And so through this practice, you're learning to consciously connect yourself with a certain source. And then you learn how to be in a similar way, how to vibrate, how to resonate in that way. See if we have got any questions. Ines, I need to find forgiveness, but the trauma has left deep scars, and I have constant triggers that prevent forgiveness. I would be very careful with that word, forgiveness. It depends on what it means to you. I feel that our society and sometimes our religions, they can push us to practice forgiveness in ways that are disempowering, in ways that we can't really swallow, that doesn't really make sense for us. So it depends on what forgiveness means to you. I can share what forgiveness means to me. That forgiveness is not about the other person at all. It's about me. It's about letting go of negative emotions towards that person. Letting go of resentment, anger towards that person. It's about keeping myself clean, keeping my heart clean. That I know that, there's that saying, karma is not nice. Karma is unfailing. And I believe in that. And I know it's going to happen. And I don't need to wish for it to happen. Whatever needs to happen will happen. And, that is forgiveness. It doesn't mean that I wish to absolve that person from the negative consequences of their action. No, the negative consequences will come. That's the natural law. You put your hand in the fire will burn you. The fire may hold no grudge towards you, but if you put your hand in the fire will burn you. Right? So there are certain things that we can't escape. And so forgiveness means this. Now, assuming that we are understanding forgiveness under the same light, maybe you need to work on the trauma first before you're able to forgive. Maybe forgiveness is not the cause but the result. It happens naturally at the end of the process rather than being something you can force in the beginning of the process. Does that make sense? Thank you, Serenity and Ben, for your donation. Then, also, if you're angry at someone else, it ultimately hurts you. It's you whose stomach is in knots. It is you whose breath isn't smooth. Yes. Okay. I've talked about this. Now, in the spiritual traditions, in the tantric spiritual traditions, both of India and Tibet, they have this practice of visualizing the deities, the gods and goddesses. And we translate it as god and goddesses in English. But the word is devata or devas, which means a being of light. In the Christian tradition, perhaps we could call them angels and archangels, but it's much more complex than that, much richer than that in those traditions. However, let's not go down that rabbit hole for now. Just whether you believe that these beings exist or not, that they are actual entities in subtler levels of reality, or just a fruit of our imagination. For the purpose of this technique, the principle is the same. These practitioners imagine the presence of that deity in front of them. They do the mantra chanting of that deity, and they imagine that they are imbuing the qualities of that deity, of that being, into their body, mind, and heart. That is the practice of absorbed virtue. We become like that which we think of most often. Whatever we think about and we think of most often, we become like that. Our mind gets the qualities of that which it dwells upon constantly. So that is the practice of in these traditions. And the idea is that consciousness has no shape. Just like water, if I put it on this container, it will get the shape of this container. If I put it in a square box, it will become square. Consciousness has no shape. It takes the shape that we give it. If we believe it is in a certain way, consciousness will flow in that way. If we believe it's a different way, consciousness will flow in that way. This means that your mind is programmable. And really understanding this is incredibly empowering. First, it takes ownership, and it can be painful, like, so I am in this state partially because I am keeping myself in this state. Yes, other things have happened in my life that were not my fault and made it very easy for me to fall into this state, into this way of thinking and being, childhood conditioning, trauma, etc. And that's to be understood as well. But ultimately, I have the capacity to create a different container for consciousness. And it will flow in that container. It will flow in that way. I can teach myself. I can train myself. I can condition my body, mind, and heart to function differently, to vibrate at a different frequency. My identity is not fixed. Identity is a construct. You were not born with an identity. It was constructed over time, which means you can deconstruct it, or you can reconstruct it however you like. If life is like a movie, you can play any role. You're not stuck with the hand of cards that you were dealt with. You can play any role. I know that there's a voice inside of you that is skeptical about this, that may feel that this is not possible, that there are limitations. And if you take those limitations as real, they will be real. If you don't take them as real, they will still be real, but for a while, as you're continuing to push the boundaries and question them. Then they will cease to limit you. Who will you choose to be in the game of life? In the movie of this existence? And that is a key idea of the book, Mindful Self-Discipline. This is chapter 14. At the end of the aspiration pillar, we might have covered that, but I often don't have time to cover in the aspiration pillar. But in any case, it deserves to be revisited here, because it's the core of self-transformation, that you have an ideal, your aspirational identity, who you want to be, and then you act in alignment with that. It's the principle of consistency from Robert Cialdini. He said that we are moved to do things that make us feel consistent with our previous choices, desires, and identity, even if they are painful. And so, the aspiration pillar exercise, you can ignore this M2, M3 here. The aspirational pillar exercises of creating an aspirational identity, creating your aspirations, your core values, and then doing the black and white exercise. And by the way, these are available in the free workbook that you can download in the resources page. Right? So you can go there on the website, mindfulselfdiscipline.com, and you'll find the free resources all there. So self-discipline at the end is about living in harmony with your goals and values. So it's basically the art of integrity or consistency. When you're clear about your goals, it's painful for you to act in a way that is inconsistent with those goals. If you make a decision that I am a writer, I want to be a writer, I want to live as a writer, I am a writer. That is your aspirational identity. Then you write daily because that's what writers do. You avoid soda because you're health conscious. It's not that you can't, it's that you won't. You don't. I don't eat meat not because I have a self-control conflict that I win every time. Not because I can't, I don't. That's not what I do. You meditate because you're a spiritual seeker. That's your identity. You don't yell at your kids because you are a conscious parent. That's your identity. Whenever you have a clear identity of who you think of yourself, who you conceive of yourself, or who you want to be, your brain has this innate programming of acting in a way that is consistent with your self-image. And so this is mindful self-discipline in a nutshell. The big summary of it all, if you wish. Know who you want to be. That is your aspirations. Remember it constantly. Awareness. And live accordingly, day after day. Action. Affirm your aspiration, your creative vision for yourself. And let the consistency bias do its thing. Now here's the time-bending quantum shift. You affirm your future as if it was already real in the present. You want to bridge that gap between the future and the present, between who you want to be and who we are showing up as. So you affirm your future into the present. You affirm your ideal self as if it's your current self. And then act accordingly. My ideal self, without going into much details, is to achieve a certain level of spiritual awakening, mastery, empowerment, etc. I have a shortcut for that I'm not sharing it yet, but it's very clear for me. This is my goal. And it may take years, decades, or lifetimes. It doesn't matter. But when I say to myself that that is who I am now, I am bending that shift. I'm shifting, I'm bending the timeline in a way. And you may say, it's not really true. Well, that's not the point. The point is, I am linking myself to my future. I'm attempting to resonate at that same frequency, to imprint in me those patterns. And when I do that, I practice different, I show up different, I feel different. It's not a radical shift because it's a process, but it's noticeable. And I know that with practice, it becomes more and more consistent. And this accelerates the journey. Be true to who you are. Know who you want to be, affirm that that's who you are, and then be true to who you are. That's the summary. If you want to be healthy and full of energy, then affirm that you are healthy and full of energy. That may not be how you feel right now. That's okay. You're focusing on what you want to create, not on the feedback of the present moment. The feedback of the present moment is your conditioning, that you didn't take care of certain things in your life, therefore you feel this way. And you're saying that you feel another way. Well, the conditioning is the feedback of now, how you want to feel. That is your vision. You hold on to your vision, to what you are creating, and act accordingly. Create those feelings in yourself, make choices you would make if you felt that way, etc. Make choices a healthy and energetic person makes. And don't mind that for a while you will not feel that way yet. It's okay. Affirm your aspiration repeatedly, and the reality will catch up with it very soon. If you believe that you have unlimited willpower, you will not have unlimited willpower. But you have more willpower than your next door neighbor who believes that he has no willpower. If you truly believe that your body is perfectly healthy and can never become sick, you may still become sick, but it will be much less often than your next door neighbor who believes that disease is everywhere and we ought to be very careful. The key is when there is dissonance between your affirmation and reality. You don't just feel, okay, this is not working, I'll stop, because then you don't go anywhere. You hold on to your vision, to your affirmation, knowing it's a process. But it speeds up the process to hold on to it with full conviction. Not your present limitations. Focus on your designed life, not your conditioned life. Let your aspiration bend reality. Because if your aspiration is not bending your reality, then your reality is bending your aspirations. The strongest one will win. The one that you pay attention to the most will win. Are you living inside out, or are you living outside in? When you're living inside out, your aspirations is bending your reality. That's what you're focusing on and energizing. When you're living outside in, you're looking outside and seeing, do I have the right to feel this way? What should I do? What should I feel? Who am I? And you're allowing your outside to determine your inside. I'm again and again coming to the same point from different angles so that the coin drops. And sometimes we need to hear the same idea multiple times until something like, I thought I had got it, but now I've got it. And you may still get it at a deeper level later. If you want to be wealthy, you think like a wealthy person. If you want to be confident, act confident. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to make a difference in the world, then make a difference in the world. If you want to run a marathon, then do what runners do. Run every day. You will become who you believe yourself to be, because that is how you will act. That is how you will choose. That's the lenses through which you will see the world and through which the world will see you. There's a quote from the book The 48 Laws of Power. I don't really like that author, but he has some really brilliant ideas. Anyhow, he said, if you believe yourself to be the king, you will seem destined for the crown. That's a metaphor of who we become, who we conceive ourselves to be. Change your self-belief by affirming your aspiration. Let that be your new self-image. Decide who you want to be. Remember it constantly. Honor it constantly. And be true to who you are. That's the message. Now let me see if there are any questions. Thank you, Anna, Atanas, CKB, Georgina, for the donation. What's the saying about drinking poison? I'm not sure which one you mean. Being born again, yes. In a way, it's being born again. That our identity is the most important element in our world, is what determines how we think, what we feel, what type of beliefs we have, what choices we make, what activities we go through, how we respond to life. It determines everything else. It's the root. And in personal growth, we see a lot of people and books and advice out there that is about hacking at the leaves without working at the root. The identity is the root. It's the end goal of any journey of self-transformation, that you become a different person. That before what was impossible becomes possible, and then becomes easy, and then it becomes natural, and then you don't think about it anymore. It's just who you are. What if people around you keep saying the opposite of what you're working on? They are part of the conditioning. They are part of the feedback that I'm talking about. But we're focusing on our vision, not on feedback. We are living inside out, not outside in. When we're living outside in, the outside determines the inside. When we're living inside out, the inside is stronger and it shapes your outside. When you're living outside in, your identity, your personality is a question mark. How should I feel? Who am I? When you're living inside out, your identity is an exclamation mark. This is who I am. This is how I'm showing up. This is the life I am created, the self that I am creating. And this key idea of the aspirational identity and the conditioned identity, who we want to be and who we are showing up as, living inside out from our vision, affirming it into reality. This key idea is there in this book, chapter 14. It is applying the principles of mindful self-discipline to self-transformation. But it's the whole theme of my next book. My next book, which will be published March next year. It's on the topic of confidence, but it's about any virtue that you want to develop. Whatever image or vision you have for your aspirational identity, the process of going from your conditioning to your aspirational identity. That is outlined in that book. 70% of whatever's in that book, 60 to 70%, is applicable for any journey you have of self-transformation. Even if you're already confident enough, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's about developing courage or patience or compassion or focus. This is the next book, Wise Confidence. It's coming up 12th of March next year. It's about defining your aspirational identity and letting go of your conditioned identity. What are the different tools that we use for that? It is continuing the conversation of mindful self-discipline. Many of the tools that you are familiar with in mindful self-discipline, such as the PAW method, journaling, the Not Now technique, the ROAR method, they're all going to be in this book, together with some new things as well, of course. And then constantly affirm the aspirational identity. So it's all about internal self-discipline. The journey here is from self-doubt to self-confidence, but it could be any other journey. Now forget about this. This is not, well, okay, I can show you this. If you want to help with the launch of the book, it's still rather early to talk about it. But if you want to become part of the launch tribe, you can go to mindfulselfdiscipline.com/book launch and put your name in there. And there are going to be some perks, free guided meditation, some chapters of the book that I may share ahead of time, and some other things. I'm not actively doing this yet, but I'm already collecting names of people who want to be part of this and help with the book. Okay. So there was more that I wanted to cover today. Initially, this whole thing of the aspirational identity is not part of this lesson on virtues, but this time I am putting it as part of this lesson because it kind of makes sense and it's important. The part that we didn't cover is the part on balancing your virtues. So I suggest you go to the resources page. Let me make sure it's there. The resources page to see the summary of that part. And it's also at the end of chapter 38 of the book, in case you have the book. But if not, there is a link there in the resources page, Balance Your Virtues, with the summary of this. The key idea being that every virtue casts a shadow, and we need to balance our virtues with the opposite virtues, with the complementary virtues. Otherwise, our virtues can sometimes be an asset, but sometimes be a liability. And there are some examples there. So that's where you can go to learn more. Sounds like your passion on paper. Yes. Yes. All right. Powerful cover. Yes, the lion. So, my friends, that's what I had to share today. Before we go, I would love to hear from you. What is the biggest takeaway for you today? What is the one thing you want to make sure you remember about this session during the week and into your life? Please let me know in the comments. Esther Harris says, resentment is like drinking a glass of poison and thinking the other person will die. Yes. Resentment is that anger loop. If it just goes anger once and then finish and you're clean, that's something else. But resentment is that kind of a low current of anger, but it never ends. That identity is the root to harness my virtue, being able to kindle a virtue or a skill, act as though you're already whom you aspire to be. Brain is the greatest pharmacy in the world. meditating and visualizing on my aspirational persona daily. Okay, we'll see you tonight, Rachel. We are who we perceive and who we want to be. Yeah, act as if. The example of extreme entanglement. Active love the things that you want to connect with. There is this, so the Bhagavad Gita is one of the most important spiritual books of India. For many people it's like the Bible in India, right? And it synthesizes many different spiritual traditions in that country. And it says that the shortest way to God is to love the divine constantly. And the second shortest way is to hate the divine constantly. Now, I was shocked when I read that. But it makes a lot of sense. Because when you're hating someone or something, you are constantly thinking about that thing. You're constantly thinking about that person. And with great emotion. And so you are reverberating to that frequency. There's that saying that worrying is praying for what we don't want. It's the same thing. Our mind will take the shape of what we think of constantly. I don't know why that came to me. Bend time and live as if in your future now. Know what's my identity. Yes. Resonating with the chosen venture and embodying it. Quantum entanglement. Okay. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for your donations and support. Thank you for your excitement about the new book. Next week, we are going to have episode 23. We are getting towards the end of this season. In next season, I may take 1 or 2 weeks break in between the seasons, but it's very likely that the next season will not be on MSD, but on the topics of the new book. So that's what I'm considering. I'm still going to think about it a little bit. I know that many people here have gone through this season multiple times. I have taught this season. It's season 7, but since season 2 or 3, it's double. So I've taught each of these classes many, many times. So perhaps it's time to dedicate one season to the upcoming book and that framework, which is also fully aligned with mindful self-discipline, of course. That's what I do. But we'll see. So I hope to see you all next week, where we're going to cover chapter 39 of MST on spirituality and self-discipline. So I hope to see you all then. Until then, stay disciplined and take care.